Day 1, 11:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Jim was a thoughtful man, a steady man. He never made a decision without careful forethought, never rushed, never got flustered. Still didn't. The first screams outside caught his attention, but his blood pressure barely moved. Then came the sky. Grotesque things raining down, slamming into the streets with thunderous force. The whole house shook. Plaster cracked, dust falling from the ceiling like dirty snow. And then they started coming. Scrambling, skittering, a pack of vermin clawing for entry, scratching at windows, testing doors, learning. Jim didn't need time to process. He was always armed, or at least had something within reach. There are too many of them, Jim thought. We need to limit access now. He turned. Jean. His voice was calm, so calm it betrayed the chaos outside. We'd need to get to the basement. A scratch. Southwest corner of the dining room. Jim's stomach tightened. Now. Jean hesitated. She had just picked up the knife to cut a sandwich, the same way she had always did, because Jim always got low around this time. Routine, habit, the words didn't register at first. What? Her voice was already thin with unease. That hollow flutter in her chest again, her brain scrambling to fill in blanks it didn't have. It's nothing. It's always nothing. You're just being dramatic again. But her fingers tightened on the butter knife anyway. Panic didn't wait for logic. Jim didn't waste time explaining. He simply moved. Gun in one hand, the other wrapping firmly around her. Not forceful, not panicking, just moving. It's going to be okay, he murmured. Glass shattered from in the dining room. They're inside. Jean jerked. Jim didn't let her stop. He guided her, quickly, quietly, to the basement stairs. Jean first, door shut, blocked, then down. The stairs creaked under his weight as he moved with care, as efficient as possible for a man his age, checking the clouded basement windows, still intact. For now. He holstered his gun just long enough to grab some spare masonry bricks from the corner. They'd been down there for years. Right now, they were about to buy them some time. Jean's breath hitched. What's going on? She was flustered. Jim could hear it and feel it. But she'd picked up on his silence, and if Jim was being quiet, she knew she needed to be quiet too. I'm not sure. His voice remained even and steady. But they have 6 legs and they like breaking into things. Jean did a near triple take. What? Her voice spiked an octave. Jim shot her a look. Not sharp, just a reminder. She swallowed. Tried again, quieter this time. What do they want? Jim slid another brick into place. He didn't look up. I don't know, he said, but I don't want us to be the first ones to find out. Jean let out an exasperated breath, scanning the basement. She edged towards the window, trying to steal a look through the gaps between the bricks Jim had stacked. Outside, the street was alive with movement. Small, jerky shifts in the blur of the dirty window, but she couldn't make out exactly what was out there. Then, in her nervous fumbling, she nearly stabbed herself in the eye with the butter knife she was holding. With a huff, she gently sent it down on the shelf in front of the window, letting out a weak laugh at herself. She looked up again and froze. A second ago, she had been staring at the familiar sight of the quiet, picturesque street. Now it was different. Not dark, not obscured, just wrong. Like something had been draped over the glass, thick and leathery, stretching unnaturally across the window. Jean's breath caught in her throat. Then the thing at the window shrieked. Jean screamed back, decibel for decibel, pure panic tearing out of her, until she felt Jim's firm but gentle hand clamped over her mouth. He held her steady and sure, muffling her cries as he moved her away from the window. Shh. His voice was calm and grounding. Shh. It's going to be okay. The shrieking continued outside, echoing down the street. Jim eased Jean into a seated position on the sacks of rice in the food storage, never letting go until he was sure she had control of her breathing. Then, from upstairs, another shriek, then another, a chorus of responding calls, layered with the deep skittering of claws scraping against the floor above them. Jean tensed. They're talking to each other. Jim moved swiftly, grabbing another brick and wedging it next to the first one on the window. Let's see how smart you are. He was testing them, seeing how long they could hold on to a thought. If their brains were small enough, maybe they'd forget. Maybe they'd lose interest. He'd hoped. Jim exhaled slowly, wishing, not for the first time, that he had more than just a Smith & Wesson. An axe, a shotgun, hell, even a decent-sized hammer would be better than nothing. But all of that was outside of the basement, and that might as well be on the other side of the world. His eyes flicked back to the basement windows. The glass hadn't shattered. Good thing? Maybe. Maybe they were too stupid to realize that we were down here. Bad thing? Maybe. Maybe they were waiting, planning something. And then, a siren. Not a full cavalry, just one squad car. Jean's face lit up with hope. Jim didn't move. The wail of the siren grew louder, cutting through the eerie silence. But something was wrong. The tires screeched in a weird pattern. A series of thuds, metal twisting, glass breaking. Jim's jaw tightened. Jean turned to him, eyes wide, desperate for reassurance. But whatever she saw in his expression was enough to crush her hope before she could even voice it. The crash came next, hard. The siren kept wailing, but the engine was still running, a steady, revving sound, the tires squealing against the pavement. Jean sucked in a sharp breath. If there had been someone behind the wheel, they weren't in command of it anymore. But upstairs, the shrieking had stopped. The skittering tapered off. Jim had the distinct feeling that if he was going to try anything, this brief respite wouldn't last. "I'll be right back," he whispered to Jean. Her head snapped up, shaking violently. The look she gave him, raw, desperate, was a plea from the bottom of her soul. "I need to see what we're dealing with," he murmured, wrapping his hands gently around hers. Jean choked out a whisper squeal. "Don't ever say I'll be right back. Don't you watch movies?" "Jean," his tone wasn't a question. It wasn't up for debate. "Stay here. Keep quiet. Stay away from the windows." Jim turned, moving with care. He placed each foot deliberately on the nails and the steps, the spots with the least motion, the quietest places to step. It was a slow, drooling ascent. His legs were burning, his hips were screaming, but he wasn't about to let Jean see him falter. At the top, he turned the knob and lifted the basement door slightly before swinging it open, reducing the tensions on the hinges, silencing them. He paused. A rag hung on the stairway wall. Jim pulled it down and tossed it onto the floor, waiting. No movement, no stragglers lunging from the shadows. Still, sweat beaded at his brow, stinging as it dripped into his eyes. He wiped it away with the collar of his shirt before lowering himself slowly into a crouch. His back ached with misery, but he stayed low, creeping just far enough to get a clear view of the siren's source. Some of them were being sucked into the wheel wells, crushed by the endless revving of the still running engine. They didn't learn. One after another, the monsters got shredded beneath the tires, mindlessly following the last. But inside was different. The driver, if there was a driver, was being ripped apart. Jim could see the shattered windshield, the busted out driver's side window, the way the things were pouring into the vehicle, tearing, feeding. This wasn't the break he was hoping for, but he'd take it. He inhaled, weighing his options. Upstairs for the shotgun, or out to the garage for the axe. His muscles screamed that he wasn't making it up the stairs in this condition. Garage it is. Before moving, he grabbed Jean's medication organizer and stuffed it down the back of his waistband. If they were in this for the long haul, she was going to need it. Then, his phone. It was still on the dining room table. He crept forward with one foot and slid it into his pocket. He crouched again. His chest was getting tight. His ribs felt like they were being cinched. Just breathe. Just for a second. He could do this. Jim wasn't a superstitious man. He wasn't one for ghosts, spirits, or metaphysical nonsense. But he was a religious man. He read his scriptures when he could. He attended church. He served. So when the feeling hit him, when it slammed into his chest with the same force as an immovable wall, he listened. The kitchen floor, the garage floor, the stairs, they were lava, in the childlike make-believe way. It was the same feeling he had when he was 5, standing outside his parents' bedroom door, knowing he wasn't allowed inside, that if he needed something, he had to wait patiently outside the line where the hardwood ended and the carpet began, the absolute certainty that he could not cross that threshold. Jim had not been shaken by anything today. Not the screaming, not the skittering, not the things tearing through their home. But now, this thing in his chest, this certainty. It wasn't fear, it wasn't doubt. It was the same irrefutable knowing he had felt the first time he had laid eyes on Jean, back when she worked the bank teller drive-through all those years ago. There was no way in hell he was stepping foot in that garage. He grabbed the electric hot plate and its cord off the counter as silently as possible and headed back downstairs.